I think that Aiden Hutchinson is just kind of fulfilling everything that most of us thought about him, which is he has tremendous length. He has a great power profile. He can play up and down the line of scrimmage. I don't think he is a true 7-9 tech where, like, hey, he is going to play on the outside shade all the time and he is going to be that true outside track guy. Like, I don't think that that's him. But I did hear a great comp on Fran Duffy and Ben Fennell's podcast where Ben compared him, stylistically speaking, to J.J. Watt, who he is not your tradition. Like, he can play 9 and 7 at points, but he's going to play 5. He's going to play 4-eye. He's going to play inside at 3 at times. Like, that's what Aiden Hutchinson brings to this football game, and that's what he brings to a team, potentially, is alignment versatility, rush versatility. That is his biggest selling point. And the ability for him to win against a guy like Jackson Kirkland, who was a lot of hype. I think maybe some of it was a little overstated, to say the least. And I'm going to talk about him in a little bit, not to let the cat out of the bag a little too early. But I do think that he has done everything that he needs to do, coming back from the injury at the end of the year without Kwity Paye on the other side of him. The microscope is firmly on him, and he passed what is probably his biggest test all year. So good for Aiden Hutchinson. I think that he showed exactly what we thought of him going into last season before he decided to come back after the injury. Doesn't really change my opinion on him a ton, but he is definitely taking advantage of the opportunity so far.
So, Ryan, you've already clearly illustrated the guy that you're going to end up talking about as your last stock-up player. He hasn't necessarily been tested from the first two opponents that he faced, Oregon State and Purdue. Notre Dame was probably this past week was probably the closest you're going to get from actually testing him. He's going to get the opportunity to face some really good ranked teams in Iowa, in Wisconsin, and also Ohio State. But George Karlaftis looked very good against Notre Dame yesterday, and we exchanged a few messages when we were watching the game. Why did you pick him as your stock up?
I actually put, and this is awesome because me and Alex didn't talk about this, right? Like, we just put it right in the doc. This is fantastic. Not only that we're talking about these guys back to back because they're both Big Ten guys, they both have that power profile, and they're both going to be compared a little bit down the stretch here. They absolutely are going to be compared, for one. And then, again, a coincidence here is a few days even before the game, I said, who would you prefer? Mm-hmm. George Karlaftis, or would you prefer Aiden Hutchinson? Aiden Hutchinson won that poll that I put up. It was pretty close. I think it was like 53-47. Like, so it was a pretty close poll. But for me, it's not even close, man. Like, I'll be honest. Like, it's not even close. George Karlaftis, I think people have forgotten because he comes into his freshman year at Purdue, dominates, 17 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks, fantastic stuff. He looks like he's the next big thing. And then 2020 happens, abbreviated season, fighting injury, fighting COVID. He only plays in a couple football games, still has production, but also Purdue decided to go from a 4-man front to a 3-man front in 2020 for whatever reason. So he's playing like a base 3-4 defensive end, which didn't make any logical sense. This year, they're back to a 4-3. And I'll be honest, like the first couple games, didn't watch much of him, just in passing a little bit. And he was very disruptive. But I think people are kind of overanalyzing the fact that he did not record a sack in the first 2 games. And they're like, what is going on? But I think he had like 12 or 13 pressures. So, like, he's disrupting the game. Like, there's no doubt about it. He just hasn't recorded a sack. But he goes into this Notre Dame game, and all the things that I love about George Karlaftis was on full display against Josh Lugg, specifically, the right tackle for Notre Dame, who was in fifth-year senior, so he's kind of been around the block a little bit. His first full year as a starter, but like it's not like he's a freshman that was just thrown into the fire against George Karlaftis. George Karlaftis is 6'4", 280 pounds, physical profile. Obviously, he is a true power rusher. He is a converter, and there's no doubt about that. But then he's got a little more looseness than you think, and he's got some closing bursts that is unreal for a guy that size. And you saw it was almost back-to-back plays where he got Lugg lunging on one. He shows a little bit of hip flexibility. He's able to just do a quick arm over, get easy pressure, gets a big hit on Jack Cohn. It was like 2 snaps later. 2 pass rush snaps later, I think the next one he forced him out of the pocket, so he did his job. Joe thinks that he got pancaked, but like in
He did
reality,
get pancaked. He did do his
no,
job, but he
not
also
really,
got put on
Joe.
his ass.
Not really, Joe. No, Joe, because Cohen broke the pocket. If he didn't break the pocket, he never would have gotten put on the ground. I don't want to hear about it.
He still got put on the ground, though. That's get put on the ground is getting put on the ground.
No. You're a long snapper. You don't get it. You'll never understand.
Getting put on the ground is getting. I totally get it.
No.
Getting put on the ground is getting put on the ground.
Anyway, so he did his job on that snap. Then I think it was a very nice pass rush snap, man. He went 3 steps up the arc and he put his outside foot in the ground and he absolutely annihilated, went straight down Lugg's chest and put him flat on his back for the sack. And he was like that all day in the run game, in the pass game. He was a menace, man. And I am telling you right now, do not look at the box score and compare these 2 football players and say, slam dunk Aiden Hutchinson, man. Go watch George. He is disruptive. And the difference between the fact is that Michigan has a more talented defense. Like, let's call it what it is. George Karlaftis is the dude. Everybody knows he's the dude. He is the main focal point. The first play against Notre Dame, they put a tight end on him, and then they also chipped him with a running back on the very same play. So they basically had 3 guys predicated to stop 1 football player on Purdue. I'm here to tell you, George Karlaftis, top 10 player in the 2022 class. Joe DeLeon, top 10 football player. Fantastic.